In a recent interview, Steph Houghton opened up about feeling let down by the England team's management and missing that essential human touch during her exclusion from the squad. Today, we're going to break down what she said, how this reflects on manager Sarina Wiegman, and what it says about relationships between players and management at the highest level. Let's get into it. Alright, let's talk about Steph Houghton then. It's been a bit of a weird one today. We were trying to think of what we were going to talk about for this video, and then the big news broke, or well, the interview dropped between Steph Houghton and The Guardian. Harry, we've both had a chance to read through the article. What were your first thoughts about some of the comments she made?
It was surprising. I'll be honest, I'm quite surprised. You know, these are... you never have thought what she told us was true from the outside, and now she comes out and says all this stuff about Sarina Wiegman and England, and it's very, very interesting. It's come at a very weird time. Obviously, we had the England-Germany game on the 25th of October where it was brilliant. The whole of Wembley was there, and we celebrated Houghton's England career and all this, and what an icon she is. And then it comes out a couple of weeks later, we get this, and it is very surprising. I'm quite shocked.
I thought because of that tribute, this was a bit of a weird timing for it. Because we just paid tribute to Steph Houghton, and then she comes out and immediately attacks the England manager. Now, I don't think the whole interview was bad. I think there was some really valid points made. I think when she spoke about equal pay, or at least better pay for women's footballers, I thought that was really accurate, and she did make some good points. But I thought the Sarina Wiegman bit was really interesting. That's what we're going to talk about today. Talk about our thoughts on it. Talk about what she said. And obviously, from the outside perspective, we don't know what the situation was exactly. I'd love to hear Sarina's perspective, but we'll try and piece together from what we do know about the England camp what actually went on, and whether Steph Houghton is correct in feeling the way she did. Because the overarching theme of the article was that she felt let down by the management, and this was after... So we had Euro 2022, of course, where England won it on home soil. Houghton not involved in that squad as she was injured. The bigger place of contention, though, comes in the World Cup 2023, where Houghton wasn't in the England squad. Now, I thought at the time, I didn't see anything wrong with that at the time, because of the quality in the England side. And I do agree with the sentiment that Houghton is a little too entitled in that regard, because I get that she was England captain until 2021, but under Wiegman she wasn't England captain anymore. She wasn't playing competitive, regular top-level football. I can see why she thinks, as the leader, as someone who can offer a lot of leadership in the squad, she would be helpful, but I can also see why Wiegman wouldn't take her.
Yeah, very much so. As you say, I think perhaps because of her legacy, because of how vital she had been to England previously, I think Houghton felt that she then was deserving of a place in World Cup 23. But when you think of the other players in the squad, when you think you've got Millie Bright, obviously Williamson as well, Greenwood as well. You've got that's three centre halves already that are better, if not competing with Steph Houghton for the England places.
And then I find it very hard to argue that she would have deserved to go over Jess Carter, who had played very regularly for Chelsea that season. I'd found it hard to argue she should have gone over Esme Morgan, who had played, I think, more minutes for City in the season prior, or over Maya Le Tissier. So I think that while she makes some good points, I don't think she can be too frustrated about that one. And I get that she was the England captain, but and it does open up a big question here about that transition of leadership, because obviously I think a lot of high-profile captains tend to they retire for international football, and that's when the leadership change happened.
Yeah,
this wasn't the case here, and we've already seen Sarina Wiegman do it at the Netherlands. A bit of a pattern now of stripping the captaincy off of a very established player. Why does Wiegman do that? Is it to establish her own authority, or is it that some captains need to realise when they should be stepping down?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think that obviously, as you say, most managers when they join when they join a team, whether that's international or domestic, they join, and usually it's the captain who they will use as their focal point in terms of the manager comes in and goes, "You're the captain. You're going to help me work out how I'm going to fit in here." With Wiegman, she seems to have a different way of doing it in terms of the way I'm going to get into this new job is I'm going to change the captaincy, and that's going to be my statement, is I'm not going to use the captain. I'm going to move the captain on and kind of establish my own authority. And I think you are right, because by moving the captain on, Wiegman then kind of wrestles back a bit more power, because the captain is obviously, if the new captain's not going to have the same effect that the old captain did, and I think it just gives Wiegman a little bit of extra kind of persuasion over everyone else. But it's a bold statement, it's a bold way of management. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I do think it's interesting, because you by that point you already you're putting out a big message, but it's not necessarily a positive one.
No, but and as you say there, the new captain, I think, will also feel empowered by the fact that she has been chosen as the captain. I think that will have an impact as well with regard to the squad dynamics. But as you say, you can't really argue against it because Sarina Wiegman, has won a European Championship at both of the international teams she's managed and reached the World Cup final. Yeah. And if it wasn't for some brilliant USA and Spain teams, she probably would have won two World Cups in that time. So, yeah, I can see why Houghton was frustrated. Houghton was frustrated, but I can also see it from Sarina's perspective. I think the other thing that Houghton touched on quite a lot was that human touch element. She was quoted as saying that the human touch was missing in her interactions with management, and she said, "I felt let down, and I felt there was no communication or explanation." So that's a bit more interesting. I mean, I can understand the feeling of being let down. Not going to World Cup is always going to be heartbreaking, but equally, was she one of England's best players going into that tournament? Probably not.
Probably not. The one thing I do find interesting to touch on the World Cup especially, and then going forward, obviously, Houghton mentions a lot of that she felt there was this kind of moving of the goalposts in terms of it, and to me, you kind of interpret that as, okay, it sounds like Sarina's given her a target or given her something to aim for. If you hit this, I'm going to give you this. But by the sounds of it, Houghton's done that, and then the goalpost, the achievement's been moved, the goal has been upped.
Yeah.
So if that was the case, if that's the reason why she didn't go to work, because let's say if Wiegman had set Houghton at aim, and it was like, okay, if you hit this, I'm going to take you to the World Cup.
I think it was a set number of minutes, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, and it's interesting because if Sarina has moved that goal, kept moving the goalpost, which has kind of prevented Houghton from being able to carry on with England, that becomes much more interesting than simply a case of she's been dropped due to the quality ahead of her.
Yeah.
And I do think that I would be surprised, again with the captaincy, you usually wait till the retirement. If that moving of the goalpost was so severe, that does also feel like Wiegman was just trying to push her out, and that's where the human touch element comes into it, is that there wasn't much, it didn't feel, because it was the Houghton felt like they'd moved to the men's way in terms of she was just a number rather than a human. It does kind of feel that Wiegman perhaps did just push her out and try by moving these goalposts, by changing the aims, managed to get her out of the squad.
Yeah, I want to come back to that in a second. Just to touch on quickly on Houghton, do you think the injury, because obviously she lost the captaincy because she wasn't in the squad because she was injured, do you think that had more of an impact than Wiegman trying to impose herself in the squad?
Potentially so, and because you had to change the captaincy while she was injured, someone else had to come in, and with the other captaincies, Williamson obviously did a very, very good job, and he's a very good leader. And perhaps once Houghton came back, Wiegman thought that Williamson was a better fit, and B, when a player who is already towards the end of their career, when they do pick up an injury that does require such a big change, I can see from Wiegman's point of view, if she perhaps thought that Houghton was thinking about going anyway, in terms of thinking about starting to retire, thinking about not playing for England anymore. But obviously that wasn't the case from Houghton's point of view.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting comment. On some of the takeaways then, you mentioned there that human touch element and Houghton feeling it's very important in management. How important do you think it is? How important do you think that empathy and this human touch element is in high stakes competition?
I think it is very dependent on who the player is and who the management is as well, because I think the perfect example right now is at Manchester United between Ella Toone and Mark Skinner. Now, we're in a situation where it feels like Ella Toone needs that empathy, needs an arm around the shoulder, but as we know Mark Skinner, we know he's not that kind of manager, and we're seeing that isn't working at the moment because they're clashing, because Toone needs encouragement and Skinner, by the sounds of it, is giving, the opposite of encouragement in terms of discouragement. There we go, yeah. So I definitely do think that you do have to have some level of empathy. I think from Houghton's point of view, with the England set up, at the time Wiegman hadn't been in the job very long, and these are interactions between the newish England manager and the England legend. And I think from what Houghton's saying is that she would have definitely appreciated a much more human interaction and a bit more, probably a bit more respect, to be completely honest.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. She wants to feel valued as a player of such prestige. You do expect that sort of treatment. And I think it's, as you say, it is definitely player dependent, because I think there is, while a lot of people will immediately jump and say that, you know, that arm around the shoulder, that empathy is always going to be better. I think that you can rightfully make the counter argument that being hard and being like very tough on your players can also be very crucial. I think the correct answer is probably a mixture of both.
Yeah.
You know, a bit of both can be very helpful. I think that Emma Hayes is someone, just to give an example, someone who does get that right. Yeah. Because at times it's, you know, you're not, you watch some of the dressing room and it's, you guys didn't play well enough. There's a standard here at Chelsea and you didn't meet it today. But then you see other moments out on the pitch where she's got her arm around Guro, right, and she's encouraging her, and then Guro goes and performs. So I do think, you know, you do need that healthy equilibrium, and I think that managers who are too stern and too cold and distant, you know, managers like Jonas Eidevall, it just doesn't work, because while you do want to enforce standards on the players, there also needs to be a human element. If not, they're not going to listen. Yeah. And so I think the correct answer is probably a mixture of both, but I don't think that human touch is necessarily 100% needed, but you do need some, because if not, the players just won't care about what you say.
Yeah, it is a tough one, and from Wiegman it's interesting because especially from an England point of view, we've all got to know and love Sarina Wiegman, and the success she's delivered.
How could we not?
Exactly.
On the Euros.
The success she's delivered to the Lionesses is incredible, but when this Houghton interview comes out and you hear other things, you then start to think, well, how has she got the success? Has it been a mixture of both, or has it been from Wiegman just, you know, very... It's one of those where have the results come because Wiegman's been harsh.
But then I was surprised by this interview, because everything you see, and obviously we don't see behind closed doors and we don't see every day, so, you know, there will be a lot of stuff we miss. But I think everything you see out on the field and everything you see in the media, Wiegman is very much an arm around the shoulder kind of person. You know, I picture her picking players up and encouraging players rather than being very stern. I think she sets her standards, as every top manager does. Yeah. And the standard for England is to be competitive at every major tournament. For me, I think that Houghton made some interesting points in this interview, but overall, I think she just came across a little bit as entitled. I get that she was an England legend, but I think that there was this stubbornness to not recognise when actually her time was up, maybe, as an England international. Because as much as she may have felt she's at the top level, I think the women's game, especially right now, is growing at such a rate that level is going up so quickly. And given she missed such an extended time with such an extended period with an injury, I think I can see the justification for her not being in the England squad for those tournaments.
I understand
the second tournament of the Euros.
Yeah, I understand from Houghton's point of view, because, you know, the obviously massive pioneer of the women's game has strived for, you know, so many things and has been crucial to the development of women's football. And
her projects outside of playing have arguably been more important than her playing career. And she was a fantastic player who progressed the game so much, but her projects have been so good.
I think it was that I feel like there was a level of respect that was perhaps lost or misinterpreted in terms of, I don't think Wiegman would have stripped the captaincy or, you know, reduced her playing time and dropped her for England because she doesn't like Steph Houghton. I think that may have just been that was the case at the time. As we say, you know, there were better centre-half options for those tournaments. I think Houghton maybe interpreted that as a lack of respect and a kind of, as you say, a lack of empathy. But it was just Wiegman doing her job.
I think a changing of the guard was probably due, and it was just that Wiegman did it sooner than I think a lot of other managers would have. If it was, who was in the role before? Phil Neville, wasn't it? He would have waited years. Steph Houghton would still be playing today. But yeah, I can see from Wiegman's perspective why that change was needed.
Yeah.
And England have gone on to great success since, so I don't think you can really make an argument against it. But yeah, I thought the article was really interesting. I do encourage anyone that's watched this video and hasn't read the article yet to go and give it a read, because I do think there are some really interesting points raised. But overall, it does just feel to me like an ex-footballer trying to get, you know, still has a lot of gripes with what's happened, and I'm not sure it's 100% fair. Or true. Yeah, but we'll see. Anyway, that's everything I think for today's video. I hope you have enjoyed. Do get involved in the comments below and give us your thoughts on this discussion. And yeah, I'm sure there will be a lot of thoughts. So do get involved down there. If you haven't already, go and check out our match week 6 WSL review. That'll be on screen now, so you can go ahead and give that a click. That is everything from us today, though. Thank you guys very, very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.